Hi guys, welcome back. So it's a rest weekend in the Six Nations. I want to get a debate going on safety. It's a big topic at the moment and I want to know what you guys think. You guys have been absolutely amazing on your comments recently. I think people realise it's a really safe place to comment, no abuse on this channel. So I welcome your thoughts on it. So firstly, let's put it in context. Rugby is a contact sport and it's the physical contest that makes the sport interesting. It makes it exciting to play and to watch, and with that brings inherent danger. And you're not going to eliminate all danger from rugby, that's absolutely for sure. However, the ultimate goal, obviously, is to negate all unnecessary risk. I think that's certainly a fair goal to try and strive towards. But you've got to keep the physical contest and make it compelling to watch and play. Otherwise, it stops being what makes it great. So it's hard. This is a hard thing. There's no right answer. There's a lot of grey area. So don't get too caught up if someone's got a slightly different opinion to you, because there really probably isn't no correct answer. And let's put it in historical context. Rugby union has been very slow to move into the professional era. Its origins come from the public schools, the upper class ethos, which gives rugby some really good morals. So there is some positive to those origins. However, it does mean that it's been very slow, in fact, extremely slow on coming into the professional era. And indeed, it was only in 1995 that the game went professional, which is crazy when you compare it to football, for example, or its most close comparison of rugby league. And then all of a sudden, they realised they got all this catching up to do. There's all these injury sources, all this risk that suddenly came about because of the increased physicality of the players, the conditioning, the size, the power. Coaches suddenly realised there were loopholes in the ways that the laws were interpreted and they could get away with certain things. But the officiating and the running of the game, the sanctions, if you like, were behind this sudden rise in professionalism. So you had a game being officiated as if it was the old amateur game when it was being played by completely different animals, if you like. And that's really given rise to this increased extra risk in safety, if you like, without really catching up on how to deal with that. And it's only now that we're starting to play some catch up, and that obviously causes problems where you're trying to catch up quickly rather than do it as you go, especially with new information on brain injuries and later onset of brain diseases with head contact, etc. And to be fair, there has been some success on this. Look at Scrums. Watch the old footage of Scrums. There wasn't really much of a problem with Scrums, safety-wise particularly. Obviously inherent danger, of course. But it was crazy. Modern Scrum coaches would have a fit when they watch old Scrums. It's like the players were suddenly drawn together by a loose type of magnetism, and then they'd kind of collide in without any real preparation, and then the ball was in and out before you knew it anyway most of the time. And there wasn't really a problem. But modern coaches realise we can do a lot better than this. We can put a lot more power through scrums. We can win penalties. I mean, getting penalties from scrums is a huge thing. And then all of a sudden we started getting these huge collisions where the two front rows would absolutely smash together at a million miles an hour. And more often than not, that force would then force them down into a very dangerous position with a lot of force. I mean, it's like mini HGV collisions going on. And they've gone through many bizarre protocols to try and mitigate this. I mean, remember the crazy pause call? But I think now we've got a much better scrum engagement process with the pre-bind, a lot less of a collision. Sure, the scrum does go down sometimes, but not with the ferocity of it, that it used to. And it does seem to be improved somewhat, although, of course, there's plenty of a way to go on that. But, it's just showing these things can be tackled, but it takes time and it takes iterations. So let's talk tackle height, okay? Stand-up tackles are really the problem here. It's not so much players choosing to tackle high, it's the fact they're staying stood up to tackle because they know they can get away with it. You can slow the ball down. There's lots of tactical advantages with standing up, and I hate the stand-up tackle anyway. I've been talking about that a bit with England and Elliot Daly, etc. But it's a habit, and it's come from rugby league, which isn't rugby league's fault. But coaches have seen that if you stand up in the tackle, if you're strong enough to do it, you can delay all sorts of stuff, stop the offload, slow down ruck ball, etc. And so what you're trying to do now is by trying to bring the tackle height down and saying to players, you can't just stand up and tackle, you have to actually go for the classic hit and dive and fall over type tackle. It's forcing players to undo a lifetime of coaching and habit, and that's really hard. So far we've seen loads of penalties, yellow cards and red cards, and it is spoiling games. Now, the question is this the best way to break a habit? By just, really cold turkey saying you can't do it anymore, you're going to have to break your habits, and it's going to take people a long time. It's assuming once you break these habits, then the game becomes more flowing, you get less red cards. So it's kind of short-term pain for long-term gain. Or do you think there's a better way of doing it? Or do we just have to say, okay, we're going to spoil a lot of games here, but the ultimate outcome is better? I'd like to know your thoughts on that. And then the second specific I want to talk about is ruck clear out. Now, it's these shoulder charges into rucks. It's just smashing into rucks, not targeting people's heads, but it's dangerous when you just smash into a ruck at 100 miles an hour with your shoulder, because anything could happen. Now, technically, players are meant to drive. They're meant to bind on and drive a player away, either backwards or to the side, trying to stay on their feet. Well, a lot of players would be saying, well, how do I clear out a ruck when there's players off their feet, they're down so low, their heads are down, I literally cannot bind on and drive players away. How do I do it? Well, the answer probably is you don't, and you have to let the officials deal with players who are off their feet or doing things illegally in the ruck. And if you cannot clear someone out legally, then you just can't do it. You just have to leave it alone. And that's a very hard pill to swallow, a very difficult habit to get out of. I'd like to know your thoughts on that, especially if you still play and you have this situation where you want to clear a ruck and you literally cannot do it legally. So that's a tricky one. The crocodile roll, and Ben Ryan's been on about this, the coach, and he has mentioned it many times in the past. I've listened to the podcast with him in it. It's illegal essentially, because what you're doing is you're deliberately going off your feet. You're not driving them off. You're not rucking, if you like. But officials have been allowing this to go for a long time now. So coaches have been coaching it for a long time now, as you would if it's something that everyone's doing and you're allowed to do it. But it is absolutely dangerous. You're putting all that force, twisting force through the player you're rolling off. Very dangerous. But it doesn't need to be changed. There doesn't need to be a change in the law. It's just the application of the law. So hopefully that one will be improved, where you do have to try and bind and drive off. But again, it's not easy. And that injury to Jack Willis highlighted that problem as well. So, there's lots of other safety things I could go on about. Please let me know in the comments your safety concerns, or how you see safety in the game, and what can be done and what can't be done. What are the key issues? How do you deal with it? And how do you think they're going about it now? Is it the right way? Are there better ways of doing it that don't spoil so many games? Or do we just have to go through this tough period to come out the other side with a better game? Anyway, guys, please let me know your thoughts. I'd love to know and to hear from you, and I will catch you guys next time.